Can a person change? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. Can a person change? I mean, it's one of the biggest questions there is, really. And it's definitely a question that philosophy is kind of set up to explore. And in a way, philosophy might be one of the answers to can a person change? Can a person change? Where do we even begin? Okay, so change, right? We say when we're really asking can a person change, what are we asking? Like, what are we really asking? What is it when people say can a person change? What is the nature of the change that they're asking about? Typically, some people have different intentions with that question. Some people are asking, can a person change their behavior? Typically, if somebody's asking this question about a person or people in general, they're asking like, they're typically asking, can a person change their behavior from bad to good behavior? There's like some sort of behavior that they want there to be changed, and typically, they want, can a person be less greedy, or can they be less violent, or can they be this, or can they be that? That's one level, right? People are asking, can people's behavior change? But once you examine that question for any length of time, then you realize that, well, the behavior is one thing. Like, the behavior is sort of the fruit of the tree. The behavior is the symptom. And in short order, you realize that when you start asking questions about human behavior, that the answers about human behavior and if they can change and the nature of them, they go deeper. So you got to go, okay, what's driving the human behavior in this particular instance? And when you go into human behavior, the next level, you find out quickly it's a combination of psychology, mindset, emotional constitution, right? So on that level, you're talking about thoughts and feelings. And you're going, oh man, can we change thoughts and feelings, right? Because it turns out that the behavior is really little more than the result of the thoughts and feelings. So you get into thoughts and feelings, and you go, okay, we'll start with thoughts. Like, how do we change thoughts? Can we change thoughts? Can we change the thoughts of a person? And the answer is yes. We've been through a lot of history, and a lot of human beings have come and gone off this planet. And it turns out that the answer is yes. Human beings' thoughts can change. In fact, the whole predication of education is that a human being, if you take a human being and you expose them to information with the intention of changing them, they can be changed. In terms of education, the ideal form of education is you take somebody who has, they're in a level of ignorance to certain types of intellectual development, emotional development, physical development, and you put them through a training program of wisdom and academics and intellectual training and physical training and emotional awareness, and through a period of time, they can be changed. That's the whole idea of education, right? And within that, we know that the conscious thoughts are the driving train of the change. And I mean, I've talked to lots of teachers and lots of people in my capacity working with the public, and it seems as though people who have conscious thoughts and they consciously want to change and absorb information and new concepts and perspectives and perceptions, they do in fact change, and they do in fact change their perceptions, or their the perspectives can change the perceptions. The mind, the thoughts we think, that was Buddha's whole thing. His whole ministry, or his whole message to the world, was we are what we think. So change begins with right knowledge. The Buddhists have a list of the 8 uh, noble truths in the fourfold path, and they go, you have to begin with right knowledge. And what right knowledge means is that you got to start with your brain and the thought housing that's going on in there, and you got to make sure that you're working with good thoughts, with proper thoughts, true thoughts, and with mental discipline and knowledge that your thoughts create who you are. They create your perceptions, they create your emotional associations with the reality that you're in. And ultimately, when they combine with your feelings and your soul, which we'll get to, they create you, and they create your experience with a large degree of correlation. And lots of people have taken that advice and almost to the person, they come back and report that, yeah, that's true. When you think a certain way for long enough, your life reflects that. It reflects that pattern of thought. And then your emotions also come into play. And when your thoughts and emotions are working in concert, then things are really cooking. So there's that level of can a person change on a, excuse me, pardon me. So there's that level of change on the thought level, which, I mean, they did the science. It's true. If you change your thoughts, you can change your person. And it seems to be a lasting change when people change their thought patterns. Now there are other ways. There are other ways to change. Now, a lot of people, there's different stimulants for change. Like usually people, typically, I mean, it doesn't really matter. There's basically a couple different ways. Like some people grow dissatisfied. They have disharmony in their life, and they register that through bad emotions or intellectual distress because their life or their circumstances aren't going the way that they'd like them to. And there's a disconnect between the way they're living and what they're putting out and what's coming back in, and they don't like it. And so that motivates them to change. Um, there's a variety of reasons why people like get into the topic. Some people are very happy with their lives. They just want to do it better, right? Like if you're an Olympic skier and you already know you're an awesome skier and you're one of the best in the whole world at skiing, and basically the whole reality is just making it so you just get paid to be really good at skiing and show up at places where other people who are really good at skiing like ski extra hard against you and compete for medals and see who's the very best skier, right? If you're at that level and you're like, oh, can I change? You're like, I want to go from normal competitive skier person to I want to be the best skier person. And they're going to approach it with the same type of thing of, okay, cool. Well, how can I change? And it's going to be the same thing. It begins with your thoughts. It really does begin with your thoughts, because your thoughts is where you're consciously interacting with your inner self. And so you start to get into that level again. And then very quickly, if you go deeper into it, if you penetrate past your thought realm, you'll get into the realm of the soul. And philosophically, we start going, okay, we can kind of see that changing your thoughts does actually lead to real change, right? Whether you're trying to get way better at stuff or you're just trying to get out of like some low vibe stuff, or like people who get addicted to stuff and they want to kick the addiction, they have to change the way they think. That changes the way they feel, and it changes their associations, and they change, right? And then, or even more ordinary miracles, like people give birth, right? People, they're one way before they have a kid, they're another way after they have a kid, and for sure there's all the biological changes and all of those metamorphoses, but typically when they come out the other side and people go from being single people to parents, they say, well, the state of mind, the state of consciousness changed. Like now I was responsible for somebody. And so their thoughts changed, and their thoughts changed. And really the other deeper level of the thoughts changing is that the values changed. Because really at the core operating of all of us, it's the value system that we hold. And the value system is very ranked. It's very hierarchical, right? Because it begins with the basics: food, shelter, water, or food, shelter, medicine. And then, it goes into like love, and sociological needs, and just the whole hierarchy of needs, right? So the value system is really, when we say can we change or can a person change, what we're saying is can the very core value system that person is carrying change? Because that value system is embedded in each one of us, which we have access to change consciously, is the source of the change. And that's where the thoughts, when you get them cleaned up and you get comfortable going into the internal process that we each have, that's where we can interact with what our true values are. And only the individual knows what the individual's true values are. It's sort of like a secret lockbox that we each have. And when you get into it, you go, oh, well, that's what this is my number one thing. This is my number two, And they're fluid based on context. Because if I'm in the context of I'm in an amusement park, I have a different set of value systems, right? Oh, I prioritize roller coasters and food shacks and carnival rides, and then water rides. Like water rides are for fourth, and that depends on if it's a hot day. If it's a hot day, water rides might go up to the top of the list, right? I might be like, oh, it's a hot day, let's ride like log jammer or some water ride or jet stream or something, right? And then if it's like crappy overcast day, you're like, dude, today's roller coaster day. So the values are context based, but the contexts are also based on values, right? It's not like, oh, it's an overcast day, so let's go murder people, right? It doesn't go off the deep end. It's just there's slight changes that are still, all of these different value systems are still contextual to your life value system, like the context of all your value systems being your life. And there are things that we have to decide in life that some people don't decide in life. We have to decide, do I want to live a healthy life? Do I want to live a life in harmony with universal frequency? Like all these things we want to determine. They're up to us to determine. And if we don't make those choices consciously for value systems, we've already been given so many from so many different angles that we will unconsciously carry out value systems that we're unaware of, and even think that there are value systems, leading us into further distress, because we'll be like, oh, this isn't the life I like. Well, why is that? And when you dig deeper and deeper and deeper into the thoughts, you're going to find there's a value system that's been set up that you personally don't agree with your own value system. And that's where the change happens. We live long enough with ourselves to find out if we actually love ourselves, to find out if we actually love our own value system. And the good news is that if we don't, we can change it. So we go into that area where our value systems are, and we get real with ourselves one-on-one, and we examine our values, and we determine what they are, and then what we feel like they should be, ideally. That's when it comes to philosophy, and there's a lot of philosophy is going to these ideal planes and being idealistic, and a lot of people outside of philosophy go, well, what's the point of that? We live in the real world. Plato says, you can't even bring the ideal world into this world or whatever, or if I'm getting whichever one wrong. Anyway, the idea is that like nothing can be ideal on this plane, but internally, our value systems are ideal. They are untouched. So when we go in and we set them and we have a real talk and a real personal conference with ourselves about what our values are, those are ideal. And those are things we hold ourselves to. And that is what informs our moral choices. And our moral choices do create our ethics. And those do constitute who we're presenting ourselves into the world, because our thoughts and feelings and our overall combined unified field, our aura, our auric field, and our personal being that are us and representing our internal process in the external world, are for sure a combination and emanate from our values and are a combination of our moral choices and our ethics that we've created on our own. And it's very tempting for people to mindlessly absorb and take on other institutionalized morals and ethics. Oh, well, like this institution's been around forever, they figured it out, or this one's been around forever and they figured it out, so I'll just take that, and I won't dig deep, and I won't set my own value system. And then they get through life and they go, oh, well, this isn't working out like I'd like it to. So we get back into there, and that's the place to take the idealism. That when you're setting your values, that's the place to be ideal, right? They go, oh, I'm gonna like whatever it is, love God, set the universal frequency. I'm gonna treat people as how I want to be treated. I'm going to have an open mind and analytical process. I'm going to, you know, you go down the list of just whatever the values are, and then you let those inform your moral decisions and build your ethics. And then you feel a sort of integrated circuit of self when a person can do that. And how does that relate to the soul? So when we go to the deepest level, we say, okay, cool. That's the kind of change that people really, typically that's the kind of change people are asking about when they're referring to change. It's like, okay, there's the behavior, there's the thoughts and the behavior and the values. And then when we get to the deepest part of the question, because philosophical questions have many layers, right? And in this layer of the soul layer, we'll go, oh, well, can the soul change? That's because that's really an answer to life. That's really a huge question for life. Is like, okay, I'm down here and I'm doing all this life experience. I'm doing all this life. It seems like if it changes me, then that's the point of it, right? At least to me. And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Life changes us, and our consciousness changes us. And all the things that happen contribute to changing us, the individual. And it does change at the soul level. Because at the soul level, like, we live these lives and all these things, and then what? To really condense it all the vibratory experiences that we're having, put through all these internal processes that we're articulating, and there's probably way more. I'm just keeping it simple because we're just having a park bench discussion here. Is it all gets all the experiences, all the vibrations, all the things, when they've all gone through all this, and even the internal process of thinking and emoting and all that stuff, at some point, all of that gets condensed into this just little piece of light somewhere in there. And this is philosophy, I can't prove it with science, that gets integrated into our soul. All of it. All the vibrations, all the vibratory experience, it gets condensed into a piece of light that does somehow get integrated into our soul experience. And that is part of the orbit of our soul that continues on past the material realm. And also, that's a realm that when we go and dig deep and go into meditation and become aware of the deeper soul states, we can access the other parts of our soul, the other parts of our experiences. However forward or backward in time you want to like take that, that's up to you and up to your particular litmus test of just, of like saying, okay, that's real. And in that sense, as we bring in these soulful experiences that travel with us, and I think for a lot of you, if you've had soulful experiences, that you can feel them in you. You can feel them. They're there. They have weight. That's why when people say people have presence or this or that, if a person has presence, it's not because they've been living a life with no experience. It's because you can literally feel in their field that they've been doing stuff and like condensing events into their soul field that you can literally feel. And that does change us. Because as we go deeper and further into life, assuming that it's eternal and never ending, which I do and I've experienced, but like for philosophical sake, just like saying, okay, let's assume for a moment that it's eternal and that the soul keeps going on and that it is this sort of hard drive of your eternal experiences of you as a being, of whatever kind of being you end up being, then yeah, it does change us because it gives us more information to refine our value system and refine the nature of the self-guided nature of our experience we call life. And so the process of overseeing our own change becomes sort of one of the points of life, and it becomes a run-up to activating our free will, which we'll talk about that in another video. So over managing ourselves, becoming aware of ourselves, understanding that we can change, understanding that we literally can't, we actually can't not change. If you look at a person and you look at their full spectrum of their life, you look at a person from being born to being 90, and you just watch them on this timeline, you watch all the stuff that happens to them and all like the way their biology changes and everything, the person changes. It doesn't matter. No person cannot not change. No person can avoid change in the course of a life. Because even if you just go from being a baby to a 5-year-old, like, you've changed. Your perceptions change, your interaction with life's changed, and you have changed. It goes with you. A person, and then, when a person goes from 5 to 20, they change again. Even if you think you're being, even if like your whole mindset is, I'm not going to change, I have the same value system, and this and this and this, just the experiences you accrue, just the atoms hitting you, just the photons flowing through you, just the interactions you have, it changes you. It's sedimentary in nature. It's unavoidable. Like, being in the material realm is being in the realm of change. It has no stasis, like, in a permanent way. It has a stasis in the sense of an ecosystem coming to balance with itself, but it's a balance of all moving, changing parts. Like, no part of the reality is not changing. The only way you get something, supposedly you get something down to not changing, you get to 0 Kelvin with no movement, and then everything just falls apart anyway. So if you think that you're not changing, you're actually, well, it's delusional, but then you're falling apart. So everybody is changing, and everybody can change, and everybody can self-guide the change, and eventually you'll realize that you're doing the self-aware guiding, changing, whether you think you are or not. There's simply a process of becoming aware of the fact that you are, and that every other single other person is as well. So, can people change? Yes. Right? All right. Hopefully you found this helpful. Thanks for spending time down here at Philosopher's Corner. I hope you have a good day.